Hi there, it's Vanessa from Cove, and you're listening to the 76th edition of The Networker. This week, we're looking at how relationships quietly shape credibility, influence, and momentum at work. From relational capital and personal brand, to presence, psychological safety, and the unspoken dynamics that form around power and intimacy, this edition explores why careers rarely move on merit alone. They move through people, patterns, and perception. So let's dive in. Julie Hoagland, writing for the Forbes Human Resources Council, invites leaders to rethink networking not as a situational activity, but as a long-term strategic asset. Her article shifts the focus from transactional exchanges to what she describes as relational capital, built through consistency, reciprocity, and shared growth. What stands out is not the advice itself, but the implied risk of waiting. Relationships built only when needed lack depth, resilience, and reach. Leaders who invest early create optionality before change arrives. Trust in this framing is not a byproduct of success. It is the infrastructure that makes success possible. That long view of trust continues in an article by Elizabeth Quinones and Zachariah Abdel-Noor for the Institute for Supply Management, which looks at personal brand through the lens of early career development. Before authority is earned, reputation carries disproportionate weight. Visibility becomes a signal of readiness, not ego, and sponsorship quietly determines whose names surface when opportunities emerge. The article highlights a reality many underestimate. People do not promote potential in isolation. They promote people they feel confident vouching for. Relationships act as risk reduction mechanisms long before they become growth accelerators. A broader cultural shift appears in an article by Sadab Haimia for CNBC Make It, examining why many younger professionals are stepping away from constant digital presence. Reduced online visibility is no longer synonymous with disengagement. In many contexts, it signals discernment, self-trust, and control over attention. Being less reachable has become a marker of boundaries rather than irrelevance. As algorithmic identity becomes exhausting, belonging is being rebuilt in physical spaces through fewer but deeper connections. Visibility here is no longer about volume. It is about intention. The theme of intention deepens in an article by Victoria Zalewski for the Forbes Communications Council. Career momentum, she suggests, rarely comes from singular breakthrough moments. It comes from steady, low-pressure conversations that build familiarity and trust over time. What makes this approach powerful is not its simplicity, but its reframing of effort. Curiosity replaces need. Consistency replaces performance. Relationships grow not because of a perfectly timed ask, but because presence has already been established. Opportunity becomes a continuation, not an interruption. Presence itself becomes the subject in an article by Yasser Hashmi for the Forbes Coaches Council. Long before people evaluate competence, they respond to cues of safety, confidence, and coherence. Nonverbal signals, timing, and environmental context shape how messages land before words are processed. Influence, in this sense, is not persuasive brilliance. It is alignment. People decide how much to trust you in seconds, often without conscious awareness. Credibility is felt before it's articulated. Trust at scale is examined in an article by Jayshree Seth and Amy Edmondson for Harvard Business Review, focusing on psychological safety in teams integrating AI. While the context is technological, the insight is deeply human. When authority becomes opaque and mistakes feel undiscussable, confidence erodes and learning slows. People stop questioning not because they agree, but because it feels unsafe to disagree. The article reinforces a broader truth. Psychological safety is not softness. It is the condition that allows judgment, accountability, and adaptation to survive complexity. That lens becomes more personal in an article by the Cove team, examining how romantic relationships reshape professional ones. Rather than focusing on policy or ethics, the piece looks at how intimacy alters power, perception, and opportunity inside organizations. Careers become intertwined, credibility is reassessed by observers, and teams respond to what they perceive, not just what is declared. Romantic relationships at work do not exist in isolation. They quietly influence trust, access, and decision-making long after they begin, and sometimes long after they end. Before we wrap up, let's turn to this week's recommendations. Our book of the week is The Mountain Is You. It reframes self-sabotage as a signal, not a flaw. Progress stalls not because of lack of discipline, but because unresolved emotional needs pull behavior in competing directions. Growth follows when awareness replaces judgment and habits align with identity. Leadership begins internally long before it becomes visible to others. And our podcast of the week is the cognitive science behind sudden change. It explores why disruption hurts most when identity is tightly fused to roles and titles. Research shows resilience grows when people anchor themselves to purpose rather than position and remain open to becoming someone new. Careers rarely break people. Rigidity does. That's all for the 76th edition of The Networker. The thread running through every story this week is simple. Relationships are not an accessory to performance. They are the system through which credibility, opportunity, and trust move. Presence, consistency, and self-awareness shape outcomes more than strategy alone. Until next time, stay connected, stay curious, and remember, your network isn't just who you know, it's how others experience you. And don't forget, the full edition of The Networker is waiting for you in your inbox. I'll see you next time.